Morning, everyone. Myself, Adarsh. I'm the convener of Kerala Blockchain Academy. A very warm welcome to one and all. So today we are starting with the online webinar series offered by Kerala Blockchain Academy, and we are very much delighted to start the very first session with our uh, distinguished guest, Advocate N.S. Nappinai, a senior lawyer at Honorable Supreme Court of India. In fact, she is very closely connected to KB. She was a speaker at our Blockcash Live, the International Summit Blockcash Live. In fact, Kerala Blockchain Academy is very much overwhelmed to welcome Advocate N.S. Nappinai, who is a senior lawyer at Honorable Supreme Court of India, and she is also the founder of Cyber Sati, which is an initiative to empower knowledge of cyber laws, threat, and vulnerabilities. She is also the advisor of Maharashtra Cyber Police, and she is a well-known author of the most famous book on cyber laws, that is Technology Laws Decoded, and she have also authored many other books and a TEDx speaker also. So in fact, it is our pleasure to have her for delivering a session that is blockchain, what's law got to do with it, because as you all know, like people are enthusiastic about how India government is going to take up with the blockchain and what is happening in crypto and all those kind of. So hope everyone is safe in this COVID scenario, and I'm not wasting my time. Let me hand over the session to Advocate Nappinai, ma'am. So, ma'am, please carry on.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me over in this session. Interestingly, when I came for the Kerala Blockhash Summit, that was where I was asked the maximum number of times about what has law got to do with blockchain. I think I was probably the only lawyer who was speaking at that session, and that was probably one of the reasons why this question was cropping up. And that was again one reason why I made that the topic of today's session also. And today's session will be focusing, and as the topic says, on blockchain and the importance and the implication of laws and regulations to enable this technology. The session is not meant to be and will not be about cryptocurrencies, but for all you crypto enthusiasts out there, that does not mean that I will not be touching upon cryptocurrencies. Of course, we cannot have a discussion about blockchain without first speaking about cryptocurrencies and then distinguishing it from cryptocurrencies, meaning distinguishing blockchain from cryptocurrencies. So let me move on to my presentation now. And I request all participants to not take photographs or save the screens in any manner, as these are all copyright protected content, and please also do not share it. Just move forward in terms of our understanding of blockchain and how we, as you all know, it became a better known as blockchain, which was combined with the became well known. Not like in start cryptocurrency, it just became more popular. Yeah, I was talking about this development where yesterday there was a news article that the cabinet is considering the laws instead of just moving through the RBI route with respect to a ban on cryptocurrencies. So just to start from the beginning with respect to where and how or why we are at this situation today. As far as India is concerned, it was fairly consistent in terms of being extremely cautious about cryptocurrencies. However, it did not take a specific stand to say that it is totally banning cryptocurrencies. It merely said that it just kept issuing cautionary notices. As you can see, there was a huge gap. The first one was in 2013, and the next one was straight on to 2017. But finally, in April 2018, RBI first issued a policy statement on 5th, and then on 6/4/2018, it issued a circular stopping all banking and payment systems channels from supporting cryptocurrency transactions. Effectively, this was not a ban. It was just a process by which you could not use the banking systems for, you would find my article on this in Times of India, which is very explicit with respect to what was the counterintuitive or counterproductive outcome of this particular circular. But going forward, even the Law Commission, when you look at the portion highlighted, it did not talk about a ban, but it talked about stringent laws being put in place to ensure a proper control with respect to foreign investment, but also to protect against money laundering. So the Law Commission, to a fair extent, had a balanced view, but it has not really been taken to account till date. Two Supreme Court cases also resulted in further committees being appointed. I was in fact part of the first committee, meaning I presented before the first cryptocurrency committee. I had also spoken about the need for regulation, but not for banning. The reason why I batted for regulation was this. In fact, at that point of time, the crypto enthusiasts did not even want regulation. They wanted to continue in the same way as they had been doing all along, of having a process where they would just have self-regulation. But then everything, including technology, or particularly technology, has a way of reaching a point where it has organic growth, but thereafter it goes into a situation where, for it to move forward, for innovation to be protected, for it to move forward, you need law to support you. And therefore, the reason why I was mentioning that regulation was needed, and if regulation, anyway, moving forward from the cases before the Supreme Court, you had two committees. The first committee did not set forth a ban, but the second committee not only very strongly supported a ban on cryptocurrencies, they also submitted a draft of a cryptocurrency bill. And this is the reason why I'm also starting with cryptocurrencies now. Because the cryptocurrency bill draft that has been submitted not only impacts cryptocurrencies or crypto assets as it has been defined, but also tokens, which form an inherent part of the blockchain infrastructure. With this kind of a very slight, government is now toying with this idea, and with this draft being the only thing in front of them, there is deep concern with respect to how the government is going to move forward in balancing its caution or fear against cryptocurrencies with the need to support blockchain, which is something they have already affirmed they are in support of. Very briefly, in the IAMAI case, which is what I have just put up here, the argument, in most instances, the Supreme Court rejected the IAMAI petition and its points. Only on one ground, it accepted it, which was on the ground of proportionality. It felt that a straight off blocking of banking and payment systems channels without taking a definitive stand with respect to whether India wishes to block cryptocurrencies completely or not, is where the Supreme Court accepted IAMAI's argument. Whether it is on one ground or many grounds, as you all know, the outcome is what counts, and the outcome was the striking down of the RBI circular. I have again written a lot about this, and I have also spoken about this. There was a perception in the minds of people that somehow the RBI had banned cryptocurrency. It had not banned cryptocurrency, it merely blocked a particular channel of payment or receipt of payments, that's all. So today, when we talk about banning or otherwise of cryptocurrencies, again, we are not talking about an opening up of a ban. There was never a ban. It is just an opening up payment systems. Now let's move from cryptocurrency, topic of today, which is blockchain. When we talk about blockchain, it actually brought together two fantastic technology innovations. One was, of course, cryptography, and the other was open source. Without a central, put the government's attributes first. Anything, whether you talk about the RBI, which is what we started off with, and Reserve Bank of India, for those who may wonder what RBI is. In any event, when we talk about a Reserve Bank of India or any government authority, you have a central authority, which is the fulcrum around which everything functions. The central authority is set up through a law. It is set up through regulation, which dictates how the authority would function and what its powers and functions are. And we have all seen, we moved from a license Raj to the opening up of markets post 1992, the liberation phase. And we have seen how things have changed in India. None of us from that generation, which was pre-license or during license Raj to today, need to be told about the red tape aspects or the manner in which governance functions or the speed or the lack thereof in terms of functionality. But when we talk about blockchain, it does away with the central authority. Yet, it is something which has created trust in a trustless environment. When they call about it as a trustless environment, all that they are talking about is that you don't have an authority which dictates how and in what manner the system will function, and therefore it's trustless. You have a system which functions without any kind of oversight over it, without somebody okaying or signing off that a particular transaction is valid, a particular transfer is valid, etc. There is absolute transparency with respect to every transaction. It cuts out the middleman and it helps you to deal peer-to-peer. So it is paperless, it is borderless, and yet it is so trustworthy because of its immutability. Immutability, again, to explain it, once you have completed this transaction, you cannot be reversed. So what exactly is the point or purpose of blockchain? There is always this one question that arises: is blockchain some kind of, a solution that is looking for a problem? The use cases I will be pointing out as we go forward, and also the kind of response that blockchain has seen will clearly indicate that this may not necessarily be so. And this is why, and this whole architecture of a blockchain, which creates where from the stage when the first block is created to every block of data that is added, you have a clear time-stamped, transparent, immutable procedure which cannot be reversed, and therefore allows for and supports the trustworthiness of this chain. And this is how the blockchain works. And the difference when we talk about a lot of use cases as opposed to cryptocurrency is this. When blockchain was developed and deployed for cryptocurrency, the collection of data, the aggregation, the affirmations through the miners, everything happens in one package, meaning the product and the technology. And blockchain is the technology that drives the product here, which is cryptocurrency. They are packaged together. It is not separated. But today, when we are talking about use cases, we have effectively de-linked the technology. In some instances, it may still be a bundled package, but it is not so always. So I will also touch upon, therefore, the technical aspects in terms of what this unbundling may result in and to what extent it may effectively erode the trust factor and the authenticity and integrity factor that goes hand in hand with the blockchain. But let's still look at what are the positives in this, right? And these are just some of the, this is a quote from my book, in fact. And this is what I say for any emerging technology, whether it's artificial intelligence or the kind of data aggregation and big data analytics or IoT. We are literally a nation, we are literally people who are being hurtled into a new century with no plan, no control, and no brakes. And before we fall off that precipice, which is just lurking around the corner for us, it's time now for us to figure out that fail-safe point. You know, I always say that, you know, the fastest car, be it a Batmobile or any other, you know, a Lamborghini or a Ferrari, it doesn't matter. You would be able to speed only if you have brakes, right? You would be too scared to speed otherwise, because there is no way you can stop this machine from hurtling you down a precipice. So what exactly is the purpose of this brake when we are talking about blockchain and law? This is the reason. Blockchain, according to me, are the brakes, or rather I would say law is the brakes that is needed for any technology to speed up and reach its potential in terms of innovation and implementation. Without law as an enabler, you will move up the scale. But at that tipping point, where you need that momentum or impetus to launch you further, or where because of the lack of momentum, you're going to topple over, you will need law to be the launch pad. Whether it's intellectual property which protects your content, it is law which gives clarity about whether this is a genuine and a legally permissible technology which can be grown further. Whether it's law which enables through its regulations in terms of foreign direct investment or any form of investment, where investors will have trust with respect to this domain. That is the role that law plays. Now, this is a January 2020 report that was submitted by NISG, which is a public and private partnership, where you have a lot of government, MATI, this is a MATI sponsored research, and you have Government of India, you have some of the state governments as part of it, and the private element comes in through NASSCOM. And here again, they talk about the importance of the absence of clarity with respect to regulation, stifling investments in blockchain. And this is something which I'll be touching upon in terms of the going further on this aspect. On one hand, you have an NISG report of 2020, which says that there is not enough investments in blockchain because of lack of clarity with respect to law. But on the other, you also have a Deloitte report, which talks about huge sums of money that are already invested in blockchain, and also further research papers which talk about the kind of investments that can be expected going further. And if you look at the second point here, the 1.6 billion projection is only for one field for blockchain deployment, and that is healthcare. So imagine the size of this market as we go further. I read some of the questions that have been posted to me. Thank you so much for sharing those. It also helped me give direction to today's session. A lot of the questions seem to indicate that there was some kind of fear with respect to what is the future of blockchain. I can definitely tell you this. The future seems to look very bright, and rightly so. All that you need is more clarity with respect to law. You may think I'm a bit of an optimist because I think law is actually an enabler, but believe me, it is indeed an enabler, and we really need to figure out how we can substantially move further through this process as an enabler. And a few more slides on that will also indicate that. But one thing I can tell you, and this was a little, and this again kind of like supports my argument that India needs to move fast and move further quickly with respect to ensuring clarity with respect to blockchain. There is a study that has been put up recently comparing the kind of money that is being paid for blockchain developers. Not surprisingly, the payment is lowest in India, but the projections for the future and possibility of blockchain is the highest for India. So given both these extremes, I would say that the low which this research was projecting of about 7.5 lakhs as a minimum for a blockchain developer in India to a high of 1.5 crores that is being paid in the US, I would say that even 1.5 crores would be a very low estimate if you look at the kind of potential that it has. This again is a study, this is an extract from the Deloitte study which I had mentioned earlier. Again here, it talks about regulatory issues and how this has an impact with respect to the evolution of the blockchain industry. So let us see whether the last piece of the jigsaw, which is law as I see it, is going to help. These are recent developments across the world. US has, whilst we were under COVID quarantine, one private member bill has been submitted, again here asking specifically with respect to clarification from federal agencies on regulation of digital assets. USA has been one of the forerunners in terms of its support for blockchain technology. It came out with its national policy with respect to both digital currencies as well as blockchain. It has encouraged, and there is a very high investment with respect to blockchain. And most importantly, there is clarity with respect to law also in terms of blockchain. So I have put one of those, and these are laws which are state laws and not the federal law. As you know, unlike in India, which is quasi-federal, US is a fully federal setup. So you have, in many instances, state laws which will dictate what is to be done. And Arizona was one of the earliest to recognize the need for specific law to legalize or to accept smart contracts. One of the questions that was asked was with respect to smart contracts and its legality. Under Indian law, as it stands today, smart contracts are legally valid and enforceable. So rest assured on that, because our IT Act clearly says that a contract which can be in writing is not going to be negated merely because it is executed in electronic form. And electronic form is defined wide enough to accept even a smart contract as a legally enforceable contract. The simplicity of the smart contract does not take away from its enforceability. In fact, it may just make it easier to enforce. Another question that came up was with respect to use cases. I will be touching upon specifically Indian government's use cases as well as some international instances. But here is one right away for you with respect to the use case of blockchain for voting from your mobiles itself. This is another state law in the US, Nevada, which not only talked about legalizing or giving legal credibility to smart contracts, but went one step further to block taxation of blockchain. Isn't that good news for all you blockchain enthusiasts, right? EU has focused more on the anti-money laundering aspect. I will be touching upon how blockchain can actually be one of the solutions against money laundering. The concern that people show with respect to money laundering and cryptocurrency can be turned on its head and made into a positive use case when it comes to cryptocurrencies. Singapore introduced its Payment Services Act, where they clearly recognize digital payment token. This is what I wanted to juxtapose with the draft of the cryptocurrency bill which India is looking at, where tokens are also being made illegal. If we are going to do that, then the government will have to understand what is blockchain, and then understand how are they going to then meet the requirements of a permissionless blockchain environment before they start bringing in laws like this. You now have Malta. I always say that whether it is with respect to the acceptance of cryptocurrencies or with respect to blockchain, the smaller the country, the more the adaptability. One simple reason could be that small countries need to rely on emerging technologies to increase their per capita. So this is their way of encouraging foreign investments. This is their way of creating new avenues for their citizenry to earn money. And I think that's a fabulous model which India should, for us to adapt laws which will enable emerging technologies. So Malta has not one but 3 laws which support blockchain innovation. It also understands this fine balance between wanting to support innovation without it becoming an impediment for innovators in this field of immunology. Again, for taking forward the small country is more progressive model. Liechtenstein has also come out with its laws, and here it talks specifically again a law for tokens, law for giving legal validation to tokens. Belarus again, another country which has supported the blockchain initiative. Forward to the policy angle, which many countries have come up with. UAE, for instance, Singapore, you already know, had even prior to its 2019 act, MAS, which is equivalent to our securities, SEBI, Securities Exchange of India, and also SEC of US, had already taken a proactive view with respect to cryptocurrencies. One question had arisen with respect to whether cryptocurrencies can be treated as property. I thought I'll add this case over here and also address that question. In this case, with respect to whether cryptocurrencies can be willed and or can be used as property, the Singapore International Commercial Court did take a view that indeed it was property, and it can be, a trust can be created for handing over of or creating a testamentary succession for cryptocurrency. South Africa has a position to virtual currencies. Very interesting to note this point from their paper, where they say virtual currencies pose no significant risk to financial stability. So this is again another paper which I would strongly recommend the central government of India to take note of, because we don't have to necessarily assume that South Africa is correct, but it would be good to also take into account their point of view. Again, Canada focused more in terms of its anti-money laundering bill, and China wants to bring in its own cryptocurrency. It may be probably the first to bring that in. It also has introduced its new code where it specifically gives legal validation to virtual assets and specifically talks about the feasibility of inheriting virtual currencies. I think this again answers the question that one of you had raised. Japan, very interesting. You know, the Matt Gox case, which I have put down there, was a case where in an insolvency proceeding, one of the creditors wanted to block and take a reversal of cryptocurrencies that were lying in the wallet of the person who was seeking bankruptcy. Japanese court said that no, it is not property. And then you have the Payment Services Act, which came in 2016, which has now given legal validation for digital assets as property. So you can see how law is evolving, but I can tell you in India, there is already a case, which was a very interesting case, which is just about a computer being stolen. But in that, the plaintiff also sought for protection of the digital assets which were there in the computer. One of the digital assets that he speaks about is these e-pins, which you can earn, for instance, in some of these online direct marketing processes, etc. So the Indian court did hold that those e-pins were property and needed protection, and interim orders were granted. So it's not just about foreign laws, but you also have an Indian case which supports the view that digital assets need to be treated as property. India, we are not really totally in this ancient stage where we talk about tablets and 3 copies and bureaucracy, etc. We are supporting blockchain as a technology de-linked from cryptocurrency as a product. The way I see it is that I believe that the government has some kind of difficulty with respect to understanding the how to delineate a cryptocurrency probably from a token. And probably there is also, you know, as the NASSCOM study, this is not my view, but the NASSCOM study says that there seems to be a lack of awareness and understanding with respect to emerging technologies, both with the public as well as private authorities. So this kind of opacity or lack of understanding could also be leading them to fear cryptocurrency rather than just regulate it. But these are just some of the articles I have listed here, which I have written about both of these aspects with respect to blockchain as well as cryptocurrency, which you may want to go through. The RBI has talked about the use of blockchain in a regulatory sandbox mechanism. SEBI has also come forward with the sandbox for innovation process, which is again fairly old, so it should have already taken wings already. This is one of the most interesting developments actually with respect to blockchain. One, the TRI notification talks about and clarifies smart contracts, and the regulation, TRI's regulation, specifically encourages the use of blockchain for telecom field, the field of telecom. Now, when one person had raised this issue about use cases, you have one right here, which is very close to home. And I will show you how there are many, many instances of adaptation of blockchain, and where I therefore beg to differ from that NISG report that the governments are not supporting blockchain innovation. I would say that the governments as authorities are clearly supporting blockchain innovation. Where the problem seems to be coming from is the inability of the government as a legislative function, not as an executive function. The legislature seems to be very slow in adapting to emerging technologies and providing guidance through regulations or laws for its launch, as I said earlier. That is where the distinction is. So to just tag everything as government may be incorrect. We should distinguish between government as an executive authority as opposed to the legislature. Let's look at the use cases which I was referring to now. Firstly, Niti Aayog, and this is the most recent of developments, after the January 2020 report of NISG, Niti Aayog has also prepared a report identifying use cases for blockchain. And this is much more recent, of February 2020. The report copy is not yet available in public, but I think it will be available soon. Niti Aayog had already talked about India chain and its support for it, particularly with respect to the use case for India stack. Look at the number of state governments that are also very strongly supporting and evolving blockchain as a solution for governance. Tamil Nadu has given its name for its blockchain called Nambikkai Inayam. For those who don't know Tamil, Nambikkai Inayam literally translates as the link which is trustworthy. You know, the trustworthy link. So that's a beautiful name, which also is evocative of what blockchain really provides for you. The trust factor, the security that it gives for the data and for a transaction. All of these are captured with just one phrase. So Tamil Nadu hopes to be the first state in the country to have a statewide blockchain backbone. And this is supported by its e-governance wing, TNEGA. And we'll have to wait and see whether Tamil Nadu is going to lead the fray from down south to Kashmir. Andhra Pradesh, again, it has tested blockchain for property-related disputes as well as vehicle registrations. Telangana has tied up as a public-private partnership, and it is again evolving blockchain for governance. Maharashtra, where I'm sitting and talking to you from, and by the way, I'm originally from Tamil Nadu, so no surprise that you could hear that note of pride in terms of what Tamil Nadu is doing. Coming to Maharashtra, it is already looking at use of blockchain for land registration processes. West Bengal for issuance of birth certificates. That's a very, very interesting innovation, and you will see that this is not just India. I'll give you some use cases from across the world on this aspect. And you have Assam for governance aspects and citizen-facing applications, land title for UP, and Rajasthan again for health records. Let's move forward to some of the global trends, and you will see that you have the same aspects repeated, but something new from UK with its use of blockchain for slaughterhouses. And therefore you see the use of blockchain for food. In my personal practice capacity as a lawyer, and not just a speaker with respect to blockchain, but as a lawyer who has supported and has always been in the forefront in terms of emerging technologies, I have dealt with some very, very interesting use cases. One thing which I always like to refer to is sustainable fashion, where this fashion designer wanted to use blockchain to show how from the threads, from probably the cotton to the fabric, to the final designer product, everything is eco-friendly, organic, and sustainable. So this was one use case which was a very, very interesting adaptation. And this was for a foreign client, but something more close to home, which I really loved, and I believe that this should be given a lot more importance, is of use of blockchain in agriculture. It can be a huge value addition, and I believe that it is unfortunately not really looked at enough. State governments, if not the central government, should really start looking into it, particularly those belts which are so dependent on agriculture as their primary source of revenue. So these are just some instances I'm quoting from my personal work experience, where I believe that blockchain was the perfect solution, but it can and it continues to be, unfortunately, a very expensive solution. So we have to show how the cost factor in terms of developing a customized blockchain solution can work, and the speed of developing such customized solutions, and its sustainability long enough for you to recover on that investment and make it a profitable venture. So this is what we should really be looking for going forward. Fintech. There was a question that was raised with respect to use of blockchain for fintech. Here is your answer for that. Yes, banks have already started building, and you can see it's as far back as March 2016, the Corda blockchain process is not just by one bank, but by a consortium of 40 banks. Because when you're talking about blockchain and banking, you also need to harmonize across banks. And they understand the importance and the speed that blockchain can bring, particularly to banking transactions. But again, like I told you, law and regulation can actually speed up all these use cases. Supply chain management, you all already know this is a huge pro, and you can see here that, in terms of international, and that's why I went back to show you this, in terms of international usage also, supply chain is a very, very important aspect in terms of use case. Going forward, there are limitless use of blockchain. I thought, why not talk about law also, right? If you look at law and blockchain, I believe that this is just a fabulous business idea that is just waiting to be explored and utilized. Every single aspect of a legal dispute can be put into a blockchain, and such usage of blockchain can ensure transparency in the working of the legal justice system, and also ensure speed and acceptability. There are many aspects, and particularly with respect to proving of evidence, which I feel that we are really missing out on an opportunity here without using blockchain there. So here lies an opportunity for you all. And for all you lawyers who may be part of this presentation, do not fear. Everybody loves to say that blockchain removes the middleman and lawyers are also middlemen. But believe me, even when it comes to interpretation of a smart contract, it still comes to the domain of the lawyers. It is actually an opportunity and not a risk for lawyers. So therefore, I would strongly recommend that lawyers understand this technology and adapt it, not just as a technology, but also understand the legalities that are concerned with it, because this is going to be the future. Here are a couple of instances where ADR, or alternate dispute resolution, or more simply arbitrations, have been put on blockchain processes. It'll still have to be tested in terms of legality, because I personally feel that there are a lot of legal issues that come up, but the opportunity is definitely there. Taxation and blockchain. There are two angles to it. This slide talks about one of the questions somebody had asked about Bitcoin and taxation. But I personally feel blockchain is one of the most convenient technologies to adapt, particularly for something as complicated as GST. So if you want to link if you want to bring together all the links in the chain of GST, if you want to make it easier, not just for the government to recover the tax, multiple links to just one transaction, then Bitcoins or cryptocurrency and taxation, the question that one of you asked, here is the answer for you. One, keep in mind, and this is a very strong statement that I want to make here, that merely for a particular transaction does not, taxman is not concerned with the legality of the transaction. The taxman is only concerned with whether this is a transaction which entails a taxation. So when it comes to cryptocurrency, you can be subjected to tax in multiple forms. Do not believe that it will be only in one single form, but you will not be taxed multiple times for the same transaction. To give you some examples, if you are a miner and you have earned your cryptocurrency, it will be taxed as income tax. If you are trading in cryptocurrency and you have an earning out of that, it will be capital gains. And if you are doing it as a commodity, it can be under GST. There are a lot of issues that people have raised with respect to whether, therefore, or rather I would rephrase it to say, who should frame a law? I will come to that also after I just touch upon these, few instances with respect to risks and vulnerabilities. I'm putting this forth also to show why we need blockchain in cryptocurrency transactions. You all know about this huge case of a scam pertaining to cryptocurrency, which has been registered in Pune, where there was a promise of one Bitcoin for another, etc. And I remember somebody coming and asking me, "What is your say on that?" And I gave a very simple answer, saying that if you will not believe this in terms of rupees, why would you believe it merely because it's cryptocurrency? A scam is a scam, irrespective of the mode or manner in which it is committed, irrespective of the commodity or currency that it is you're referring to. So here is a case, and this is something which also saw a huge spurt during COVID times, which is for a kind of a ransomware on cryptocurrency, not just a ransomware to be paid through cryptocurrency, right? Where your systems are hacked and blocked and encrypted, and particularly your cryptocurrency wallet is blocked, and you're told to pay for it to be released, etc. This would be records in blockchain here. The first aspect of it is, what are the positives with respect to blockchain and its use in terms of health records? Let me touch upon the second aspect first, which is what are the vulnerabilities that we are faced with when we speak about health records and data collection. Now you see the huge numbers there where health data of patients has been compromised. This can result in very, very serious consequences. You have issues from your insurance being compromised and being misused by the hacker. You have issues of your health data, which is highly sensitive, being compromised, and where you may be subjected to then, spamming as a lowest end of a threat to some serious instances where something that's very private to you has been made public, and you can't imagine what kind of use a criminal can put it to. Now, in a scenario like this, what exactly is the role that blockchain can play? It can actually protect that data better, cryptography, right? Ultimately, relies on one of the strongest encryption mechanisms. So this is where you have a strong positive for use of blockchain in or for health records or in healthcare. It is also, as you will recollect from one of my earlier slides, it's also one of the fields where the investments are expected to be highest. Where I see a flip side to it, and again, where I believe law needs to come in and help, is on this aspect of transparency, because blockchain by its very nature is expected to be transparent. But remember, the blockchain is transparent with respect to transactions. So the transparency which is meant only for the transactions should be used for the benefit of the patients. There was a very interesting article with respect to healthcare and blockchain. We have heard a lot about data sovereignty in recent times, about how nation states should take control of and should start owning the data of its citizens. Without going into that controversial aspect, let me talk about this construct that was put forth for health data and blockchain. It talks about self-sovereignty. It talks about how our data is in different silos all over the control over. So that data can be monetized or utilized for our benefit. I thought that was one of the strongest grounds I could put forth in terms of supporting health and blockchain. Law as a tipping point. We need to bring in law to ensure that there is clarity and understanding with respect to what is blockchain, how can it function, how can it benefit different use cases. Every aspect of a blockchain architecture, from smart contracts to its immutability to what happens if it is to be reversed, each one of these also poses a legal issue. And here is where clarity with respect to law will help us better. One of the most important aspects in terms of law is, we always think law is a stumbling block. It is just going to block you from innovation. As I already mentioned to you, it is not meant to be an obstacle, but actually a launch pad. What is it that it can give you? It is meant to give you certainty with respect to whether any aspect of what you are undertaking, and here we are talking about blockchain, is that legal? Is it permissible? And can I invest in it? And will my investment be protected? In the event that something wrong happens, will I be able to recover my investment? These are all issues that are going to play a strong hand in developing and evolving blockchain as a technology for India. From the developer's perspective, as I told you, the need for protection of that technology, intellectual property rights, your ability to monetize it going forward. How long can you monetize it and ensure a return of the investment of your time, effort, and enterprise, right? All of it again is going to be dictated by law. Understanding and being able to implement and enforce something that may be in a blockchain environment is the final issue that law will take care of. So from every angle, if you look at it, I would say that law has a very strong role to play as an enabler for ensuring the huge launch of blockchain as a innovation. So let us hopefully to ensure a better future for all of you for Q&A. I'm very sorry if I was not very clear, but technology does have a way of playing with your best laid plans.